All right, in this video, we're going to learn how to do the vertical test, the vertical line test, the horizontal line test, and why you would do either of those. So if the question asks, is it a function or not? You're going to do a vertical line test, okay? So the question is this graph a function, or does this graph represent a function? Then that's when you're going to do the vertical line test. So your answer is, if it passes the vertical line test, then yes. So let's go through some examples of functions that pass the vertical line test and functions that don't pass the vertical line test. So we're just going to draw, and you'll have to excuse my penmanship here. Let's just draw a straight line. Okay, so let's say that that's the graph. If I were to take a pencil and come across, like let's say this is my vertical line, okay, so straight up and down. So the whole point of it is, how many times am I touching the graph? So think about it like this. I'm touching it, I'm touching it, I'm touching it, I'm touching it, and so forth. And then my line is touching it, and touching, and touching, touch. So does it touch it more than once? And the answer is no. So I'm just going to, let's make a line here, like I'm just going to trace this pen. So there was my pen, okay? Notice it touched the line, my graph, one time. That's it. It just touched it once. And if I moved my pen over, you know, it touched it once here, and so forth. So if it only ever touches it one time during the vertical line test, then yes, this is a function. Let's do one that isn't a function. Oops. Okay, so we're going to draw this. All right, so this is not going to be a function, because if I move my pencil over, notice now I'm touching it twice. So I'm going to draw, this was my pencil, right? That was my vertical line. Notice it touches it once here and then twice here. Anything more than once is a no. So this represents a function. This does not represent a function. So that's what you would use your vertical line test for. Your horizontal line test is used to find out whether the function is a one-to-one. So the question could read, is this graph a one-to-one? Or does this graph represent a one-to-one function? And your answer is going to be, if it passes the horizontal line test, oops, maybe, then yes. That should say test, okay. So let's do an example here. We'll do that, okay? So I'm gonna hold my pencil this way now, and I'm gonna represent it. I'm gonna represent that pencil with that line, okay? So this is the pencil, and I just drew it out like that. And it touches it once, right? And no matter if I come down the graph at any point in time, it should only touch the graph once. So this is a yes. This is a one-to-one function. Okay, let's do one that isn't a one-to-one. Okay, let's just draw that. All right, and I'm gonna hold my pen like this and move it up and down. Is there ever a time when it touches more than one place? And the answer is yes. It touches twice right here, right? And it would touch twice right here, right here, right here, right here. All the way up, it would touch twice. So this is a no. This is not a one-to-one function. The next thing that they're going to ask you is it an onto function? And you're probably wondering, what on earth is an onto function? And the first time I heard it, that's exactly what I thought, okay? So the question is the graph an onto function? Or does this graph represent an onto function? And your answer is there ever a time when your horizontal line test, or when you're holding your horizontal line, is there ever a time when your horizontal line doesn't touch the graph at all? If yes, let's put it that way. If yes, then it's not onto. If no, then it is an onto function. And that probably is the most confusing part right here. If yes, then it's not. If no, then it is, okay? So let's just draw and I'll show you. We'll just do this one again. All right, so think about this. I got my horizontal line test, right? And I keep coming up. There's never a time, because theoretically this goes on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And this goes on forever and ever and ever and ever, okay, right? So no matter where I am, I could hold my pen up here and it would still be touching. And I could hold my pen down here and it would still be touching, because theoretically it would keep going. And especially if I hold it here, I can see that it would touch the graph. So there's never a time when my horizontal line doesn't touch at least some part of my graph. So this is an onto. Let's do an example of when it's not. We'll just go like this, okay? All right, so my horizontal line, if I'm doing my horizontal, it goes on forever and ever and ever, right? Down here. So even if I hold my pen down here, in theory, I'm still touching that graph, because these lines would continue and I would touch it down here. And I'm touching, and then all of a sudden I'm not. There's a space up here, in theory forever and ever and ever, all the way up. But there's space up here where my graph, I'm not touching my graph. It has this restriction where the graph actually begins at a certain point. And then after that point, then I'm touching my graph. But before that point, I'm not touching my graph. So this is not an onto. Because there's it looks like hot. There's a time when I hold my pen horizontally that I'm not touching my graph at all. There's also another restriction that we need to memorize or write down. If the range and the codomain are different, then it's not onto. So if you're told at the beginning that your codomain has these restrictions, and you know that going in, then it can still be onto. But if you're not told, then you're supposed to assume that it should touch it the whole way. So we'll go over examples about that too. So to recap, you have your vertical line test, which tests for, is it a function, okay? So you have your, you have your vertical line test, is it a function? If it passes, it is. If it doesn't, it's not. You have your horizontal line test. If it passes the horizontal line test, then it's a 1-to-1. And if it doesn't, then it's not a 1-to-1. If you do your horizontal line test and there's times when the horizontal line does not touch the graph at all, then it's not an onto. If it touches your horizontal line touches the graph the whole time, then you're fine, and it is an onto. There are times when you're told that the range and the codomain are different, and when you're told that they're different, then it's not an onto.